Hi, we are from Group 7. On this nice occasion, let me tell you about Japan's plan to release wastewater into the ocean. Firstly, we want you to know the history of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. According to Nippon.com, the Japan coalfield, located partly in Fukushima Prefecture, played a major role in Japan's industrialization from the Meiji period from 1868 to 1912. As a site of coal mining not far from the Tokyo metropolitan area, during the peak production period of the late 1950s, a total of 130 coal mines were in operation, with annual output reaching 4.3 million tons. The shift toward oil in the 1960s, however, led to one mine closing after another. In 1976, the story of coal mining in Fukushima Prefecture came to an end with the closure of the last mining operation. Around the time the coal industry was entering its period of decline, Fukushima Prefecture began to focus on attracting nuclear power plants, which were seen as a source of energy of a new era. On the northern edge of the Japan coalfield, Tokyo Electric Power Company built its Fukushima Daiichi and Fukushima Daini nuclear power plants. This meant that Fukushima continued to play the role of an energy supplier to Tokyo. In 1961, the town council of Okuma in Fukushima Prefecture passed a resolution to invite Tokyo Electric Power Company to build a nuclear power plant in Fukushima. The town council of Futaba in Fukushima Prefecture passes a resolution inviting TEPCO to build a nuclear power plant in Fukushima. In 1963, Fukushima Prefecture announced it has invited TEPCO to build a second nuclear power plant in Fukushima. In 1968, Tohoku Electric Power decides to consider the town of Namie in Fukushima Prefecture as a possible site for a nuclear power plant. In March 1971 to October 1979, all 6 Fukushima Daiichi reactors began operations. In April 1982 to August 1987, all 4 Fukushima Daini reactors began operations.
What happened to the Fukushima nuclear power plant in 2011? In March 2011, the Great East Japan earthquake and subsequent tsunami caused a major nuclear accident with core meltdowns and structural explosions at Fukushima Daiichi reactors 1 to 4. Cold shutdown of the Fukushima Daini plant 4 days after the Great East Japan earthquake. This is later rated as a level 7 event on the International Nuclear Event Scale, matching the Chernobyl disaster. This forced the long-term evacuation of local residents and dealt a serious blow to agriculture and fishing in the surrounding area. Ultimately, TEPCO decided to scrap all 10 of its reactors in Fukushima, including the Daini plant, whose operation it had sought to resume, and Tohoku Electric Power withdrew its plan to build the Namie Qotadah nuclear power plant. In April 2012, Fukushima Daiichi reactors 1 to 4 decommissioned. In March 2013, Tohoku Electric Power Company abandons its plan to build Namie Qotadah nuclear power plant in Fukushima Prefecture. In January 2014, Fukushima Daiichi reactors 5 to 6 decommissioned. In July 2019, decision made to scrap Fukushima Daini reactors 1 to 4. In fiscal 2021, this year, Japan has approved a plan to release more than 1 million tons of contaminated water from destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant into the sea. The water will be treated and diluted so the radiation levels are below those set for drinking water. Tokyo says that the work to release water used to cool nuclear fuel will begin in about 2 years. The final approval comes after years of debate and is expected to take decades to complete. Around 2051, planned completion of Fukushima Daiichi decommissioning. How many people were hurt? There were no deaths immediately during the nuclear disaster. At least 16 workers were injured in the explosions, while dozens more were exposed to radiation as they worked to cool the reactors and stabilize the plant. 3 people were reportedly taken to hospital after high-level exposure. Long-term effects of the radiation are a matter of debate. The World Health Organization released a report in 2013 that said the disaster will not cause an observable increase in cancer rates in the region. Scientists both inside and outside Japan believe that aside from the region immediately around the plant, the risk of the radiation remained relatively low. On 9 March 2021, ahead of the 10-year anniversary, a UN report said there had been no adverse health effects documented among Fukushima residents directly related to the radiation from the disaster. Any future radiation-related health effects were unlikely to be discernible, it said. But many believe the dangers are far greater and residents remain wary. Though officials have lifted restrictions in many areas, most people have not returned to their homes. In 2018, the Japanese government announced that one worker had died after exposure to radiation and agreed his family should be compensated. A number of people are, however, confirmed to have died in the evacuation, including dozens of hospital patients who had to be moved due to fears of radiation. Who was at fault? Critics blame the lack of preparedness for the event, as well as a muddled response from both the plant operator Tokyo Electric Power or TEPCO and the government. An independent investigation set up by Japan's parliament concluded that Fukushima was a profoundly man-made disaster, blaming the energy company for failing to meet safety requirements or to plan for such an event. However, in 2019, a Japanese court cleared 3 former TEPCO executives of negligence in what was the only criminal case to come out of the disaster. In 2012, Japan's then Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda said the state shared the blame for the disaster. A court ruled in 2017 that the government bore partial responsibility and should pay compensation to evacuees.
It's really okay if Japan dumps radioactive Fukushima water into the ocean. The funny thing is that putting water into the ocean is actually the best way to handle it. And that's because it's contaminated mainly with tritium, the less radioactive and less harmful of all radioactive elements. All of the other radioactive elements have been removed from the water by chemical treatment down to low levels, and the amount of other elements in the water is relatively small and wouldn't pose a hazard diluted to this degree. They don't seem to understand the radiation and chemistry of tritium. Those of us who do understand have suggested slowly releasing the tritium-contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean over about a 10-year period. Although not intuitive, this is a very good idea. Tritium is the mildly radioactive isotope of hydrogen that has 2 neutrons and 1 proton, with radioactivity so low that no environmental or human problems have ever come from it, even though it is a common radioactive element in the environment. Tritium is formed naturally by atmospheric process as well as in nuclear weapons testing and in nuclear power plants. Let's say that again. No harm has ever come to humans or the environment from the tritium. No matter what the concentration or the dose, tritium is just assumed to be carcinogenic to humans at extremely high levels. Although that claim is only hypothetical, since at first halt, effects from tritium have never appeared in humans or in the environment. Only laboratory studies on mice at extremely high levels, only achievable in the laboratory, have shown any adverse health effects. Putting this water into the ocean is without doubt the best way to get rid of it. Concentrating it and containerizing it actually causes more of a potential hazard to people and the environment. Tritium emits an incredibly weak beta particle that is easily stopped by our dead skin layer. Even ingestion of tritium doesn't do anything. The health risks of tritium contaminated water are so low that all the countries of the world have no idea what regulatory limits to put on it. Why is this the case? Tritium, which is still hydrogen chemically, can be found in water molecules, which are two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom, because tritium is 3 times heavier than normal hydrogen because of two neutrons in its nucleus. Tritium tends to replace normal hydrogen in water molecules, rapidly diluting any tritium in our body and in the environment. Tritium likes to be in water, not in tissue. So while tritium's radioactive half-life is 12.3 years, its biological half-life in our bodies is only 10 days. The energy in the slow-moving beta from tritium mostly gets dispersed within the electron clouds of other molecules through inelastic collisions and the Bremsstrahlung effect. In the end, it is impossible to get a significant radiation dose from tritium. Unlike any other radionuclide, cosmic rays produce 4 million calories worth of tritium every year in the upper atmosphere, much of which rains out into the surface waters that we end up drinking. Nuclear power is critical to addressing global warming, not to mention Japan's economic doldrums. Japan was once at the forefront in the fight against global warming, but their carbon emissions have skyrocketed since the output from their nuclear power plants were unnecessarily replaced by fossil fuels.